He didn't ask to be noticed, didn't ask to be a symbol. All Khalil Rivers ever wanted was to make it through middle school without anyone calling his name. But at Hawthorne Ridge, silence was dangerous. Wearing a hoodie. Even more so, especially when you were black, soft-spoken, and didn't come from one of the right families. And one morning, a teacher's pride and a principal's prejudice collided, and Khalil got caught in the middle. They called him defiant, called him a joke, handed him a violin and told him to perform in front of the whole school as punishment. They expected him to fail, expected the hoodie to tremble, expected silence to mean shame. But what they didn't know was that Khalil's silence wasn't fear, it was legacy. And that violin, it wasn't just wood and strings. It was the last thing his father ever taught him before the world forgot his name. This is not just a story about a black boy in a hoodie. It's about what happens when a system tries to humiliate the wrong kid and ends up giving him a stage, a quiet boy, a mocked performance, and a moment that silenced every whisper in the room. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. He walked like he wasn't in the room, like his footsteps were made of silence, like he had spent 13 years learning how to make himself invisible. Khalil Rivers didn't speak unless someone asked him a question. He didn't raise his hand, didn't sit in the front, didn't laugh too loud or move too fast. At Hawthorne Ridge Middle School, that made him forgettable, or so they thought. Every morning, he walked through the same metal doors with the same hoodie pulled just low enough to shadow his eyes. It wasn't for style, it was survival. The halls were full of noise voices clamoring for attention, for validation, for dominance. But Khalil didn't chase that. He just wanted to make it to 315 without becoming someone's target. He sat in the back corner of every classroom, next to the windows, always the window. He liked having an exit in sight, even if it was just his imagination. His notebook wasn't full of class notes. It was filled with something else: measures, bars, bowing techniques, fingerings, things no one asked about, because no one ever asked about Khalil. His teachers saw the grades. They liked that he didn't cause trouble, but none of them really saw him, except maybe Maya Chen. She was the only person Khalil ever really talked to during school hours. They shared homeroom and the occasional lunch table. Maya was in the orchestra, first chair, violin, tiny, quick talking, always humming something under her breath. If Khalil was a whisper, Maya was a melody that didn't care who listened. "You ever think about joining orchestra?" she asked one day, spinning her violin case on the lunch bench. Khalil shook his head, but not like it was a hard no more, like a memory. "My dad used to play," he said softly, eyes still on his lunch tray. Maya paused. "Yeah, mine too. He taught me all the basics before he got too busy. You ever try?" He didn't answer. Didn't need to. His fingers tapped the table in a 4/4 rhythm, left hand spacing, E string shift. She knew the signs. But before she could say more, the bell rang. And just like that, Khalil folded back into the blur. The school assembly that Friday started like every other boring announcements, birthday shout-outs, a quick reminder to buy overpriced popcorn for the theater fundraiser. Khalil stood in the back of the gym, near the exit doors, hoodie up, hands in his pockets. He didn't like crowds, didn't like the way the noise made his thoughts foggy. That's when Principal Catherine Monroe spotted him. She stood on the stage in her crisp gray pantsuit, perfectly blow-dried hair tucked behind one ear, a clipboard tucked under her arm like it held national secrets. She had been a former private academy head before joining Hawthorne Ridge, and she brought that same elite tone to everything she did. Her eyes narrowed. "Mr. Rivers." She called out into the microphone. The crowd fell quiet like a balloon had just popped. Every head turned. Khalil didn't move. "Why are you not seated with your class?" He shifted. His voice came out low but steady. "My back's been hurting. Standing feels better. Ma'am, Principal Monroe stepped off the stage like she was descending from royalty. You were fine in class yesterday. It got worse last night. She smiled, but it wasn't kind. Perhaps you think you're an exception to our school expectations. No. Ma'am, her gaze dropped to the floor beside him. A violin case. Maya's. She had asked him to hold it while she ran to the restroom. Oh, I see, Monroe said, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. You're in the music program now. Khalil looked up, confused. No, it's not mine. She held up a hand. Nonsense. Clearly, you feel comfortable enough to carry school instruments during official assemblies. A few students chuckled. Monroe turned back to the microphone. Let's give Mr. Rivers a chance to share his musical talent. Our spring showcase is next Friday. You'll be performing a violin solo. The gym erupted in laughter. Khalil's ears burned. I don't play, he managed. Then I suggest you learn quickly. She turned, walking back to the stage like she had just taught a lesson. In her mind, she had, but the only lesson Khalil learned that morning was that silence wasn't always protection. Sometimes it made you a target. He looked down at the case in his hand, and for the first time in a long time, he thought about opening it. Khalil didn't cry, not in front of them, not in the hallway, not in the bathroom, not when he heard someone call him Lil Hoodstrument as he passed by the cafeteria later that day. He just kept walking, but his steps were slower now, like the air got heavier with every stare, like the weight of a joke was enough to make his shoes stick to the floor. By sixth period, even the teachers were whispering. One of them smiled at him and said, "Looking forward to your debut, Maestro." She didn't mean harm, but Khalil didn't smile back. At his locker, Maya caught up with him, breathless, flustered. "I'm so sorry," she said, eyes wide. "I didn't mean for that to happen. I had to go to the bathroom and didn't think she'd even notice it was with you." Khalil shook his head. "It's not your fault," but the way he said it didn't make her feel any better. She glanced down at the violin case still in his hand. "Did you open it?" He hesitated. "Not yet." A pause. "Do you want me to talk to her? I can tell Monroe it was mine. Maybe she won't care." That was the truth. Khalil had seen enough to know how these things worked. Principal Monroe didn't see kids like him as students. She saw them as examples, disciplinary footnotes, a chance to reinforce control. "You're not gonna do it, right?" Maya asked. Her voice was hopeful, protective, but even as she said it, she could see something shifting behind his eyes. He wasn't sure, because something had been stirring ever since she handed him the case, something he hadn't felt since his father died. That night, the house was quiet, too quiet. Khalil's mom was working an extra shift at the hospital. She left a note and reheated leftovers in the microwave. He sat at the kitchen table, violin case in front of him. The latch clicked open, slowly, carefully. He lifted the lid. The smell hit him first. Rosin, aged wood, the same scent that used to fill their apartment when his father would practice late into the night. He picked it up like it was something fragile, like it might shatter if he breathed too hard. He tucked it under his chin. No bow, just his fingers. He plucked one string, then another, and then he remembered. He was 6 the last time his father showed him how to hold the bow. 8 when they played a duet for a church recital. 9 when the cancer came. 10 when the music stopped. But now, holding this instrument again, it wasn't just muscle memory. It was grief. It was memory wrapped in sound. It was every word his father never got to say, waiting at the tip of a string. He didn't practice that night. He just listened to the stillness, to the ghosts, to something deeper than fear. The next morning at school, he wore the same hoodie, same faded gray, same quiet presence. But something was different. He walked past the usual group at the lockers, the ones who snickered and whispered when he passed. Today, they said nothing. They just watched. He carried the violin case, not because he had to, but because now it belonged to him. Maya met him at his desk before first period. "You sure about this?" she asked. Khalil nodded. "Once, I'm not doing it for them," he said. "I'm doing it for him." She didn't need to ask who him was. In music class that afternoon, the teacher, Mr. DeSoto, raised an eyebrow when he saw Khalil enter. "Didn't expect to see you in here," he said. Khalil held up the case. "Mind if I sit in?" DeSoto gestured to an empty seat. "Only if you promise not to make the violas look bad." A few students chuckled. Khalil smiled barely. He took the seat, opened the case, and for the first time in 4 years, he played. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't have to be, because perfection wasn't the point. Presence was, and Khalil Rivers had just stepped out of the background. By Thursday, the jokes slowed down, not because people grew kinder, but because silence started making them uncomfortable. Khalil wasn't avoiding the attention anymore. He didn't hide behind the hoodie. He wore it like armor. Every morning, he showed up with a violin case, walked the halls like a man headed towards something inevitable, not rushed, not cocky, just certain, and people noticed. The same students who had laughed the loudest were now whispering in corners, watching from across the lunchroom, trying to figure him out like he was a new equation no one had the answer to. In music class, Khalil practiced during free periods. Mr. DeSoto gave him space, didn't ask questions, just handed him a bow and said, "If you're going to do it right." Maya joined him every chance she got. "Your vibrato's tight," she said one afternoon, leaning over his shoulder. "But don't overthink the shift. Let your wrist guide the motion." Khalil nodded, adjusting his fingers. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Some music only makes sense between people who've lived it. That afternoon, as the last note echoed through the room, Mr. DeSoto clapped slowly from behind his desk. "You've got 3 minutes. Kid," he said, "make 'em count." Friday, the day of the showcase, the school gym transformed into a performance hall. Folding chairs, plastic floral arrangements, a portable stage that creaked if you stepped too hard, parents filtered in, whispering programs in hand. Teachers found their seats, students texted under the rows. Ready to film the next viral disaster, Principal Monroe stood at the podium. Hair perfect, smile tight. "We're so proud of the talent on display tonight," she said, scanning the crowd. "Tonight, we celebrate creativity, discipline, and most of all, courage." Khalil waited behind the curtain. His heart thudded slow and heavy. He could hear the muffled applause from the previous act, a dance group with glittery shirts and choreographed flips. Then his name, Khalil Rivers, violin solo. The lights shifted. The crowd went still, and Khalil stepped out. Hoodie up, violin in hand. No fancy clothes, no introduction, just presence. At first, a few giggles popped up from the bleachers. Someone whispered, "He really gonna do this?" Another voice muttered, "Hope he brought earplugs." But then, he raised the bow and played. The first note was soft, too soft, almost. It hovered, trembled in the gym's stale air like it wasn't sure it was allowed to exist. But then came the second, and the third, and the sound bloomed. Not flashy, not technical fireworks, but something honest. A melody that didn't ask for approval. It just was. People stopped shifting in their chairs. The laughter died. The phones that were raised to mock kept recording, but now for different reasons. In the third row, Monroe's smile had frozen. She leaned forward, just slightly. What was supposed to be a joke was becoming something else, something bigger than her stage. Khalil's bow hand trembled once, but he kept going. Because now he wasn't playing for applause. He was playing for the days he walked past those lockers alone, for the hallway whispers, for the silence in the lunchroom, for his father, who never got to see this moment, for his mother, still in her hospital scrubs, sitting in the back row with tears welling. The melody climbed, fell, held a final note longer than anyone expected, and then silence. The bow dropped to his side. Khalil stepped back, didn't bow, didn't smile, just stood there, like the ghost who had finally shown himself. And slowly, the gym erupted. Not the scattered, awkward claps of forced encouragement. This was real, loud, unified. Even the students who laughed hardest were now on their feet. Monroe didn't clap. She just stood there, arms crossed, staring like she'd seen something she couldn't explain. Backstage, Maya met him with wide eyes and a grin so big it nearly cracked her face. "You did it," she whispered. Khalil blinked, still catching his breath. "No," he said. "We did." Behind them, the crowd still buzzed. In the hallway, kids passed each other the video clips. One caption read, "The boy in the hoodie just made us shut up." Another, "Never underestimate the quiet ones." That night, Khalil walked home under the streetlights, hoodie up, violin case in hand. Not faster, not prouder, just free. For the first time in a long time, the hoodie didn't feel like armor, it felt like home. The performance didn't change Khalil, not really. It didn't make him louder, didn't make him chase attention. He still wore the same hoodie on Monday, still kept his eyes down, still walked the halls like a shadow stitched to the edge of the room. But something else had changed, the way people looked at him, and that was enough to make someone angry. Malik Carson had always been the name people knew first, 8th grade, basketball captain, top of the social food chain. He didn't earn respect through kindness, he controlled it. With a smirk, with a clap back, with the way he could walk into any room and make it feel like he owned the floor. He wasn't used to sharing attention. And now people weren't talking about his highlight reel from Saturday's game. They were talking about Khalil, the quiet kid, the violin dude in the hoodie, the one who made the school stand up and listen. Malik didn't like that. Not because Khalil did anything wrong, but because Khalil hadn't done anything for Malik. No head nod in the hallway, no thank you for not getting bullied last year, no act of gratitude. He just existed, quiet, respected, untouchable, and that needed to change. It started small. The next day in the lunchroom, Khalil slid into his usual seat near the back. Only this time, the chair was already pulled out. Someone had dumped mashed potatoes on the seat. Neat, intentional. He didn't react, just grabbed a napkin, wiped it clean, and sat from across the room. Malik watched, expression unreadable. The day after, Khalil's locker was jammed shut. Someone had shoved pencil shavings and bits of eraser into the latch. Again, no outburst, no complaint. Just silence. But silence can be a mirror. And for someone like Malik, it reflected something he didn't want to see, power he didn't control. By Thursday, the whispers began. "I heard his solo wasn't even that good. He just got sympathy points because he's quiet. Bet someone helped him learn the piece." No one ever said who started the rumors, but Malik didn't need to speak. He had people for that. Boys in the locker room, girls in the group chats, kids who wanted to stay close to the flame and didn't care who got burned. Maya heard the talk too. She cornered Khalil after homeroom. "Are you okay? I'm fine," he said. "You don't look fine," he shrugged. "They'll get tired eventually." But Maya shook her head. "This isn't about them. This is about him. Malik doesn't like being second. You're a threat now." Khalil blinked. "I didn't do anything. That's why he hates you," she said. "You didn't play the game." Friday, gym class. The teacher split them into teams for flag football. Khalil and Malik ended up on the same team. By coincidence, or not, during a play, Khalil ran a clean route, caught the ball, and started toward the end zone. He was fast, focused, silent, until Malik slammed into him from behind. Way too hard for flag football. Khalil hit the ground. Shoulder first, breath knocked out of his chest. The room went quiet. Malik stood over him, grinning. Oops. The gym teacher blew the whistle, called a foul, but didn't press it, didn't ask if Khalil was okay, didn't want the trouble. Khalil stood, rolled his shoulder, walked back to the sideline, didn't look back, but he felt it. That heat, that smirk, that slow boil of someone who didn't like what he couldn't break. Later that day, Khalil passed Malik near the lockers. Malik leaned back, arms crossed. "You know what I don't get," he said, voice low. "You didn't even try to be anything, and they gave it to you anyway." Khalil didn't stop walking. Malik took a step forward. "You think being quiet makes you strong? Nah, man, it makes you forgettable. You just got lucky with one little concert." Khalil turned. Finally, met his eyes. "I didn't do it for them." "Then who?" Malik asked. "Myself." Malik blinked. Just once. And that's when he knew this wasn't about popularity anymore. This was about control. And Khalil wasn't giving it up. That night, a new group chat started on Snap. Anonymous name. No profile pic. Post is, "Hoodie Boy really that good?" Or just another sad story they want us to clap for the likes piled up. So did the comments. But Khalil didn't respond. He didn't need to. Not yet. Monday morning came with the weight of something unsaid. Khalil walked into homeroom and felt it. The pause in conversation, the shifting glances, the heat behind every smirk. He kept his hoodie up, kept his violin case zipped in his bag, kept his answers short, but inside, something was stirring. Not anger, not fear, just a knowing. He had become a symbol, and symbols don't get to be normal. By lunch, things escalated. He entered the cafeteria and saw his usual table already full. Malik's crew sat there now, stretched across the bench like royalty claiming a throne. Khalil didn't say a word, just turned, found a quieter spot by the vending machines, and sat. 3 minutes later, someone sent him a picture. It was the cafeteria, his old seat, captioned, "Reserved for real talent." He stared at it. No reply. Then another came, this time a photoshopped image. His face pasted onto a toddler's body holding a violin. Caption, "Mozart's quiet cousin still can't play in tune." Laughter exploded from Malik's table. Khalil deleted the messages, but the burn stayed. That afternoon, in world history, it got personal. The teacher had them pair up for a project. Random draw. Khalil got assigned to Casey Mitchell. Blonde, popular, best friends with Malik's girlfriend. She saw Khalil's name and made a face. "Do I really have to work with him?" she asked. Not quietly. The teacher gave her a warning glance. But the damage was done. The class snickered. Khalil didn't flinch. Later, at their desk, Casey leaned over. "You're not going to make me do all the work, right? You look like one of those smart but silent types." Khalil raised an eyebrow. "Wouldn't want to ruin your grade." Her smile was sharp. "Or maybe you just fake smart. That's the vibe." He didn't reply. Didn't need to. He let the silence say what he wouldn't. After school, Maya found him by the bike racks. "Hey," she said, "you okay?" He shrugged. "Same as usual." "No, it's not. You're in their sights now. This isn't about the performance anymore. They're trying to erase what you did." Khalil adjusted his bag. "They don't have to erase it. They just have to bury it under noise." Maya stepped closer. "You don't have to let them." Khalil looked at her, really looked. "You think they'll ever let someone like me just exist?" Maya's voice softened. I think someone like you makes it harder for them to pretend you don't. That night, the group chat hit new lows. Someone posted a voice memo, a mocking violin screech layered over a recording of Khalil's performance. The caption, "When your hoodie's louder than you're playing," it spread fast. Kids who'd clap for him now forwarded it, reacted with crying, laughing emojis, used the audio in memes. And once again, Khalil stayed silent, but silence wasn't surrender. It was calculation. Tuesday morning, locker vandalized. Again, this time with sticky notes, each one with a fake quote, "I peaked in 7th grade. Practice makes pitiful. Violins are for weaklings." He peeled them off one by one, folded them into a neat square, put them in his pocket, not because he was keeping them, because he was remembering them. Second period, language arts. Ms. Garza handed back essays. Khalil's had a 98 on top. He didn't even blink. Malik's was 2 rows back, 78. Garza made a comment, "Mr. Rivers." As always, thoughtful and thorough. You could teach a section on structure. Malik looked up, caught the eyes turning toward Khalil again. That same weight, that same shift, and something in Malik cracked, because this wasn't about music anymore. It was about space, and Khalil was taking up too much of it. Between classes, Malik walked right past him, shoulder-checked him hard, made him stumble into the lockers. Khalil caught himself, looked up, didn't say a word. Malik leaned in. "You keep acting like you're above all this, but you're not. You're just another quiet kid in a hoodie trying to play grown." Khalil met his stare, calm, even. "I'm not playing anything." He said, "I am something." Malik blinked, just for a moment, then laughed. Too loud, too fake, but the crack had started. And Khalil saw it. That night, he sat at his desk, violin on the bed behind him. He didn't pick it up. Instead, he opened his notebook, wrote down every name, every moment, every post, every fake laugh, not for revenge, but for record, because sometimes the quietest people keep the loudest books. Wednesday morning came with a cold snap. Students tucked their hands in sleeves, pulled hoodies tighter, rushed through the courtyard without talking much. But Khalil stood still near the edge of the building, backpack slung low, eyes on the mural outside the auditorium. It was faded now, some old painting of school pride from years before, a trumpet, a football, a trophy, no violin, no hoodie, no kids like him. He stared at it for a long time, not with bitterness, with clarity. Inside, the building buzzed with gossip. The snap story from last night had spread again, the one mocking Khalil's performance. Only this time, someone added captions like fraud and special ed vibes. No one claimed it, but everyone shared it. In Maya's words, that wasn't a joke. That was a hit job, and it was working. Khalil noticed the shift, not just in stares, but in absence. People who used to nod at him now looked away. Some of the teachers started treating him like a burden. In fourth period, he raised his hand for the first time all week. The teacher flinched, didn't call on him. He slowly lowered his arm, invisibility restored. That afternoon, something changed. A substitute teacher in gym class didn't recognize names, so students wrote them down on index cards for roll. When Khalil turned his in, the sub blinked. "You're the violin kid." "Right." Khalil nodded once. The teacher smiled. "My nephew's a cellist. He showed me your video, said you were legit." Khalil blinked. It was the first kind word he'd heard from an adult all week. After school, as he packed his bag in the empty music room, Mr. DeSoto walked in. "You got a minute?" he asked. Khalil nodded. DeSoto sat across from him, folding his arms over his knees. "I saw the snap, the edit." Khalil didn't say anything. DeSoto continued. You know what I heard under that distortion? What tone? Control? Real technique? Khalil shrugged. They're just mad because I didn't mess up. No. DeSoto said, they're mad because you showed up. In a hoodie, with grace, with skill. That scares people who think they've got the world sorted. A pause. DeSoto leaned forward. You're not responsible for their fear, but you are responsible for what you do next. That night, Khalil pulled out his violin, tuned each string by ear, drew the bow across the A string slow, even, controlled. He closed his eyes and remembered the hallway, the shoulders brushing past, the laughter, the silence. The moment his name got called during assembly, in the second after the last note faded at the showcase, he breathed, then began to play not for practice, but for precision. He was preparing, not for revenge, for a choice. Thursday, in advisory, the teacher announced a new school-wide initiative, Digital Literacy Week. Students would lead workshops on misinformation, bias, and online ethics. Khalil felt his throat tighten. It was almost funny. He was living that topic. Then the teacher said, we'll be forming a student council to design the final form. If you're interested, sign your name on the list. He didn't move, not at first. Then, he did. He walked to the front, signed his name in block letters, folded the paper once, and walked back to his seat. Nobody said a word, but he saw the look Malik shot him across the room, the kind of look that said, you're still breathing, you're still fighting. Khalil met it with a stare of his own, the kind that said, not just breathing, building. That afternoon, Maya caught up with him outside the school gate. You signed up. He nodded. You sure? Another nod. Maya smirked. Good, because I already signed us both up as co-leads. Khalil raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. If you're going to make noise, you might as well have a backup band. They both laughed. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. Later that night, a new Snap post appeared. Same photo of Khalil on stage, but this time, a different caption he played. Y'all folded. It wasn't signed, no username attached, just floating in the feed, but it got shared a lot in the silence that once surrounded him. It started shifting again, not into noise, but into attention, respectful attention. And that was worse for Malik than any speech Khalil could have given, because you can mock a moment. You can laugh at a performance, but when the room starts to remember you, that's when the war begins. Monday started off with a cold sky and gray clouds curling low over the rooftops of Hawthorne Ridge. Inside, everything looked normal. Students spilled into hallways, lockers clanged, laughter echoed, but beneath it all, tension buzzed like static before a storm. Khalil felt it the moment he stepped inside, a tightness in the air, eyes that lingered too long, half whispers that cut off when he got close. He kept walking, hoodie up, head down, but even silence has its weight. And today, it pressed on him harder than usual. Third period, language arts. Mrs. Alvarez was out. A sub sat at the front, scrolling on his phone, uninterested. Khalil took his usual seat near the back. A few minutes later, the classroom lights dimmed. Someone connected their phone to the projector. It wasn't part of the lesson, but it didn't need to be. The screen lit up a video, not from TikTok, not from YouTube, from inside the school. It was him, Khalil, on stage, from the showcase. But the audio was altered. His violin sounded warped, off-key, exaggerated into screeching chaos. Someone had edited in a laugh track, another layer auto-tuned Twinkle Twinkle playing over his solo. Captions flashed across the bottom in neon font. When you think you're Beethoven, but you sound like broken Wi-Fi, laughter exploded through the room. Some students slapped desks. Others leaned back and howled. A few tried to hide their smiles, looking at Khalil, then away. But no one stopped it. The substitute didn't even look up. And Khalil, he didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared at the screen, at the version of himself that wasn't his. Maya wasn't in the room, but Riley was. She sat 2 rows away, didn't laugh, didn't record, just stared at the screen, then at Khalil. He wasn't blinking. His fingers were balled into fists under the desk. When the video ended, someone hit replay. And again, the room filled with laughter, fake violin, auto-tune, flashing text. Another voice shouted, "Yo, Hoodie Boy's got that dial-up tone." Khalil stood, quiet. He didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't demand. He just walked out. The laughter didn't stop. It followed him into the hallway. By lunch, the video had made it into group chats, not just school-wide, district-wide. It had already hit 1,000 shares. Someone added a filter to make his hoodie glow neon. Another version added crying emojis floating across the screen. In the comments, why he looked like he battling demons with that bow. Yo, he auditioning for Netflix Hood Edition. This the quiet kid y'all were hyping. Every post cut deeper, but none of them showed the real sound, the real performance. Just the joke. The humiliation was surgical, edited, timed, viral. And by the time Khalil made it to the music room, he felt hollow. DeSoto looked up from his desk, saw the slump in Khalil's shoulders, the weight, the hoodie drawn a little tighter around his face. "You saw it," DeSoto said. Khalil didn't answer. He sat, opened his case, pulled out the violin, and just stared at it. Across campus, Maya slammed her phone onto the cafeteria table. "Who did it?" she barked. Riley glanced around. "No one's claiming it. Came from a burner account. He doesn't deserve this. He never did." They looked across the room. Malik's crew was huddled at the far table, smirking, whispering, high-fiving. Maya's jaw tightened. "I'm done watching them break him," Riley nodded. "Then we fight back." But Khalil wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about control. How easy it was to take someone's story and twist it. How one video could erase months of work. How the same crowd that clapped for him now laughed at him, and yet he didn't break, because something inside him had already shifted. Humiliation was noise, but Khalil knew how to live in silence. He wasn't playing their game. He was building something they couldn't touch. Not yet, but soon. In 7th period, the intercom crackled on, "Khalil Rivers, please report to the main office." Heads turned, whispers followed. He stood, zipped up his hoodie, grabbed his bag, and walked out. The room went quiet behind him. But this time, the silence didn't feel like isolation. It felt like pressure, like something was coming. Khalil walked the length of the hallway toward the main office like he was headed into a courtroom. Not fast, not afraid, just measured. Each step echoed off the tile, a rhythm steady enough to drown out the whispers swirling behind closed doors. He had been here before once, in 7th grade, when he accidentally triggered a lockdown drill by opening the wrong utility door. They'd called it careless behavior. He called it bad signage. But this wasn't a mistake. This was something planned, and he was walking straight into the heart of it. When he opened the office door, the receptionist looked up. Her smile faltered when she saw him. "You can take a seat. Principal Monroe will be with you shortly." He didn't respond, just sat, hands folded, eyes forward. 2 minutes later, the door opened. "Mr. Rivers," Monroe said, voice tight. "Come in." Her office was bright, sterile, degrees on the wall, family photos arranged in perfect symmetry. Everything about it screamed control. She gestured toward the chair across from her desk. He sat without speaking. She studied him for a moment, arms crossed. There's been an incident. Khalil blinked once. Yeah, I've seen the video. That's not what I'm referring to. Pause. She tapped her pen against a folder. We've received several complaints regarding the environment in your classrooms. Students reporting discomfort, saying they feel unsafe. Khalil narrowed his eyes. Unsafe how Monroe folded her hands. There have been screenshots, messages, some suggesting that you've been making indirect threats, jokes about retaliation, performance-based outbursts, even possible violence. He stared at her, blank. What messages? They came in anonymously. As a precaution, the district has advised we temporarily suspend your participation in public-facing roles, including the Digital Ethics Forum. A beat passed. You mean the one I helped build? She didn't answer. Just continued. This is not disciplinary, just a cooling off period while we investigate. Investigate what a rumor with no source. Monroe's voice stayed calm. We have a duty to respond to student concerns. Khalil looked her dead in the eye. And do you have a duty to protect students being publicly humiliated with doctored videos? No response, just silence. It said everything. He left the office with a printed notice in his hand. Temporary program removal pending review. By the time he reached his locker, the weight in his chest had settled into something denser than anger. Resolve. Maya was waiting there. Her face went pale when she saw the paper. Are you kidding me? She snapped. Grabbing it, they're suspending you. For what they said anonymous tips. Khalil replied, false claims, stuff about students feeling unsafe. They're flipping the script on you. He nodded. Yeah, and they're good at it. She held the paper like it was burning. You know what this is? Right, it's not punishment, he said. It's erasure. Later that day, the group chat flared up again. Someone posted a new poll. Should Hoodie Boy be allowed to keep performing? None. Yes. No. What performance within 10 minutes? Over 400 votes, mostly thumbs down and laugh reacts. Malik voted twice from burner accounts, then screenshotted it and posted democracy at work. The caption, the people have spoken. And just like that, the humiliation wasn't personal anymore. It was institutional. It had gone from mockery to narrative. Khalil sat in the music room alone after school. DeSoto stood by the door, arms folded. I saw the memo. He said, Khalil didn't speak, just plucked a low G from the violin. Soft. Even, you want to quit? DeSoto asked. No. Then what do you want? Khalil looked up. His eyes were calm, but behind them, something sharp had taken root. I want to finish what I started. That night, he opened his laptop, created a new document, titled it, They Can't Edit the Truth. He started writing, not a defense, a timeline, a full account of the showcase, the group chat leaks, the snap stories, the vandalized locker, the office meeting. He didn't use anger. He used facts, screenshots, timestamps, eyewitness names, questions Monroe never answered. And then, at the bottom, this isn't a request for pity. This is a reminder silence isn't consent. And stories don't belong to the loudest voice in the room. He saved it, encrypted it, printed 2 copies, one for him, one for someone who still believed in truth. By midnight, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Riley, a screenshot. The poll had been taken down. Caption violation of school harassment policy. No names attached. No apology, just deletion. But Khalil didn't smile, because silence after a scream isn't peace. It's the next breath before something breaks. The next morning, Khalil arrived early, before the first bell, before the noise, before the building remembered how to hum with drama and distraction. He sat alone at the round table in the student lounge with nothing but his backpack, a folded sheet of paper, and a silent determination. The paper, his report, his timeline, his proof. He wasn't going to yell, wasn't going to post it online. Not yet. This wasn't about getting even. It was about being seen accurately. Truth didn't need volume. It needed clarity and a witness. By third period, the rumors shifted again. Khalil had missed the start of class, but not because he was hiding. He was in the library, meeting with Mrs. Carter, the school's academic integrity officer and faculty sponsor for the Digital Ethics Forum. She'd requested to speak with him after getting a blind CC from the district liaison. She didn't say much at first, just read the paper, line by line. Then she looked up, eyes sharper than expected. "You wrote this last night." He nodded. "Do you know what you built? I know what they tried to take apart." Her voice softened. "This isn't just defense. It's documentation. If half of this is accurate, it is." Khalil said, "Every timestamp, every screenshot." Carter leaned back in her chair. "I've been in education for over 15 years. This is the first time I've seen a student present an incident report more complete than the adults assigned to protect him." Khalil didn't smile, didn't blink. He wasn't proud. He was tired. Across campus, the whispers tried to regroup. The snap videos weren't spreading as fast anymore. The poll had been deleted. A few burner accounts had vanished overnight. And Malik, he was quieter now, not because he regretted anything, but because people were watching, and that wasn't his strength. He worked best in the shadows, but now the shadows had light pouring through. At lunch, Khalil sat with Maya and Riley. The cafeteria was still loud, but there was a different energy now. People looked, sure, but fewer laughed, and more looked away when he met their eyes. Maya passed him her phone. "Check this." A new post, not from Khalil, not from Malik, a screenshot of the video edit, side by side with footage from the real performance, split screen comparison, caption. "This is what they turned into a joke. This is what he actually played. Be careful who you clown. You might be mocking someone more disciplined than you'll ever be." The post had already hit 600 shares. Khalil read it twice. "Who posted it?" Riley grinned. "Let's just say someone who got tired of the noise." Fifth period. Mrs. Carter called a surprise meeting with Principal Monroe. She slid Khalil's report across the desk. Monroe barely looked at it. "Is this student submitted?" "Yes." "And what do you expect me to do with it?" Carter leaned forward. "Read it, verify it, and maybe consider that the boy you're treating like a problem has done more to protect the integrity of this school than half the adults in this building." Monroe's lips tightened. "I'm not going to let a viral moment dictate our policies. This isn't about a moment." Carter replied, "It's about a pattern, a pause, then districts reviewing your form decision." By the way, Monroe didn't respond, just picked up the paper, read the first line, and for the first time in days, she didn't have a quick answer. After school, Khalil stayed behind to practice in the music room. The halls emptied around him, the air outside thick with autumn and the dry rustle of leaves. DeSoto stepped inside, leaned against the door. "You play different now," he said. Khalil looked up. "How so? Less like you're trying to prove something. More like you already did." Khalil lowered his bow. "I didn't prove anything." DeSoto nodded. "Maybe not to them, but you proved something to you. That matters more." Khalil looked down at the strings. They gleamed in the low light. "Not fancy, not new, but enough," he whispered, almost to himself. "They can't mute me." DeSoto smiled. "No, they can't." That night, Khalil walked home with his hoodie half-zipped and the autumn wind curling through the streets like a song waiting to be written. The violin case bounced lightly against his back. He wasn't angry anymore. He was aligned, because when they tried to humiliate him, they forgot something vital. He didn't need their microphone. He had a melody, and people were finally listening. There's a difference between cruelty and calculation. Cruelty is reckless. It lashes out, hoping to wound. But calculation? It waits. It plans. It makes sure the blade twists where it hurts the most. And on a gray Thursday morning, Khalil Rivers learned exactly what calculation felt like. It began with an email, not to him, to the Office of Student Conduct, subject line concern behavior patterns from student K, Rivers, no sender, no school email, just an anonymous tip routed through a mass domain. The contents: a collection of cropped screenshots from Khalil's group chats, out-of-context lines from project discussions, fragments of text from a shared document in the Digital Ethics Committee, edited so carefully it looked like he was orchestrating division, not collaboration, and worst of all, an altered photo. Taken during a recent brainstorming session, it showed Khalil standing beside a whiteboard, but someone had blurred the context, erased keywords, leaving behind only the phrase, control perception, reshape narrative. It looked like manipulation, like propaganda, to the untrained eye. It was damning, and that's exactly what they wanted. The next day, he was pulled from second period, not called, escorted. Two assistant principals showed up at his classroom door like federal agents, asking the teacher to excuse him, their faces blank, their tone rehearsed. Khalil stood, didn't ask questions, didn't make a scene. He knew the drill. When a black kid in a hoodie gets walked out of class, it doesn't matter what he's done. The hallway assumes guilt. The whispers follow. The narrative builds itself. The conference room was ice cold. Principal Monroe sat at the head of the table, posture stiff. Next to her was someone new, a district liaison named Mrs. Trent White. Clipboard, expressionless. Khalil took the seat across from them. Trent began. Khalil, we've received a concerning submission related to your recent behavior and influence over other students. He didn't speak. She flipped through a thin packet of printed screenshots. Comments regarding school image, perception control, and what could be interpreted as threats of disruption. Khalil raised an eyebrow. I've never threatened anyone, Monroe interjected. We understand context can be complex, which is why we're asking questions. Trent leaned forward. Why did you write that message on the board? I didn't. He said, I did write something, but that's not the full sentence. She didn't flinch. Do you deny being part of the group chat shown here? No. But those messages were clipped. That's not the whole thread. Again, silence. And then, we're not here to assign blame today. This is a procedural conversation, but we will be temporarily removing you from your position on the ethics forum. Khalil exhaled through his nose. That forum exists because of me. Monroe folded her hands. This isn't punishment. It's protection for everyone involved. Whose protection, he asked. Trent blinked, then said, we just want to ensure the environment remains safe. There it was again. That word, safe, a word that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with comfort. And Khalil, he made people uncomfortable. By lunch, the story had already spread. He's off the forum. He got pulled from class again. Guess he's not the golden boy anymore. And Malik, he didn't say much. He didn't need to. The damage was done. But Maya, she was furious. This was calculated. She said, gripping her tray with white knuckles, they're trying to bury you behind policies, behind fake screenshots. Khalil nodded once. It worked. Riley leaned in. So, what now? He looked out across the cafeteria. At this point, he said quietly, they're not just mocking me, they're trying to erase me. That night, he sat at the kitchen table with a letter in front of him, the official district memo, temporary leadership suspension, pending internal review. His mother stood over the stove, quiet, then turned off the burner. You gonna tell him? She asked. Khalil didn't answer. The front door opened. Boots hit the floor. Heavy, measured, familiar. Jeremiah Rivers stepped in, dropped his keys, removed his coat, then looked at his son. What happened? Khalil slid the letter across the table. Jeremiah read every word without expression, then folded it once and asked, "Did they ever show you the original sender?" "No." "Did they ask if you had anything to say?" "They said it wasn't about blame." Jeremiah's jaw tightened. Then he stood, walked to the hallway closet, and said, "Put your shoes on." Khalil looked up. "You going to school, I'm going to war." The last time Jeremiah Rivers walked into Hawthorne Ridge Middle School, he didn't say much. He didn't have to. Back then, Khalil was in 6th grade accused of plagiarizing a writing assignment. No one thought a black kid in a hand-me-down hoodie could have written on his own. Jeremiah had walked in with a manila folder, quoted district curriculum policy, and dropped a time-stamped original handwritten draft in front of the English department. No raised voice, no threats, just facts. By the time he left, the teacher apologized. Twice. Today felt different. Today, the air around him crackled like a storm waiting to break. When Jeremiah and Khalil stepped into the main office, everything stopped. The receptionist sat a little straighter. A guidance counselor looked up, blinked, then quickly found something else to do. Even the assistant principal, who'd once called Khalil reserved but borderline defiant, suddenly found a reason to walk the opposite way. Jeremiah spoke only once. "Principal Monroe." Now, she came out within seconds. Hair flawless, smile tight. "Mr. Rivers." "Good afternoon." "I assume this is about the forum review process." Jeremiah raised one finger. "No pleasantries. We'll talk in your office." She blinked, momentarily thrown off by the tone. Then she turned and led the way. Inside, the door clicked shut. Khalil took a seat beside his father. Jeremiah remained standing. He placed the folded letter on Monroe's desk. Slowly, like setting down evidence in court. "I want 2 answers," he said. "Only 2. Monroe laced her fingers together. "I'll do my best." Jeremiah's voice didn't rise. "First, who filed the anonymous report?" "That information is confidential," she said quickly. Jeremiah nodded once, not surprised. "Second, why was my son's role on a student-led forum revoked without verifying any of the digital evidence or giving him a direct opportunity to respond?" She hesitated, then reached for the memo. It wasn't a revocation. It was a procedural pause based on a pattern of reported behaviors. What behaviors? She glanced at Khalil, then back at Jeremiah. Language suggesting influence over peers, concerns about tone, potential misuse of platforms. Jeremiah stepped closer. "You mean leadership?" Monroe opened her mouth, closed it again. "Then we have a duty to protect all students." Jeremiah leaned forward, voice steady as stone. "And when exactly does that duty include protecting the student? Because so far, all I've seen is the school reacting to manipulated screenshots while ignoring 3 weeks of harassment, defamation, and edited video content, and all of it targeted at the only black student bold enough to speak when he wasn't asked." Silence, a long one. Then Monroe tried again. "We're investigating." "No." Jeremiah cut in. "You're pacifying." His eyes narrowed. "You want quiet, not resolution." She didn't respond. Jeremiah finally sat, folding his arms. "I have military experience and 12 years with a federal agency specializing in cyber and threat analysis. You know what I learned there?" She didn't answer. He leaned in. "That perception is currency, and right now, your office is broke." Outside, students passed through the halls unaware that a war of words was playing out behind an office door. Inside the music room, Maya tapped her pencil against her binder. "They pulled him out of every meeting," she said to Riley. Riley shook her head. "And no one's owning the video edits. Malik's still walking around like he's untouchable." Maya stared at the window. I'm done waiting for the adults to fix this. Riley glanced up. What are you thinking? Maya opened her laptop and whispered, we post the full video. Back in Monroe's office, the temperature shifted. She finally reached for her keyboard. I'll reopen the review, she said quietly. We'll look at the original footage, the chat transcripts, and revisit the leadership decision. Jeremiah nodded, but not quietly. He said, you're going to acknowledge the harm publicly. Her jaw tightened. That's a serious request, and this is a serious boy, he replied, nodding toward Khalil. Khalil hadn't spoken once, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Sometimes silence lets others show you who they really are. By the time they walked out of the office, the energy in the building had shifted. Khalil moved differently now, not because things had been fixed, but because the narrative was no longer being written without him. And Jeremiah, he didn't look back, didn't say goodbye, didn't need to. He had done what all great shadows do, stepped in, reminded the room who they underestimated, and left the spotlight to his son. That evening, Khalil opened his messages. At the top was a link. From Maya, no caption, just the upload Khalil Rivers, unedited, the full performance, clear audio, steady footage, no filters, no cuts, just truth underneath it. The first comment read, the internet owes this kid an apology. The video didn't go viral, not in the fireworks and flash way people expect. It didn't blow up overnight, didn't trend. It simmered, spread quietly, link by link, share by share. But this time, the people watching weren't laughing, they were listening. By first period Friday morning, the video had over 1 million views, not from strangers, from students, teachers, parents, people who had only seen the distorted version before. Now they saw the truth, the real performance, the real music, the real Khalil, unedited, undeniable. And that changed everything. In the hallways, it started with eye contact. People looked at Khalil and didn't turn away. They nodded. Some smiled. Some just moved aside. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pity. It was respect, the kind that can't be demanded, only earned. Malik walked past him at the lockers and didn't say a word, not because he was done, but because he didn't know what to say. Khalil's silence had outlasted his noise. By lunch, teachers were talking. Miss Alvarez printed out a quote from Khalil's final essay draft and pinned it to her door. You can't control how people see you, but you can control what you give them to remember. In the teacher's lounge, someone pulled up the footage on their phone, played it, watched the full 4 minutes, no interruptions. Then one of them said, why did we let it get this far? No one had an answer. That afternoon, Maya met Khalil in the quad. Students passed around them, headed to last period. You saw the comments she asked. He nodded. Some, did you see the one from Mr. Lennox? Khalil looked up. No. Maya pulled out her phone and read, thank you for reminding us that not all leadership needs a microphone. Some of it wears a hoodie and holds a bow. Khalil blinked once, then said quietly, I wasn't trying to lead anything. Maya smiled. That's why they followed. Inside Principal Monroe's office, a different kind of conversation was happening. Miss Carter stood beside the desk, holding a printed transcript from the forum Khalil helped organize months earlier. These were his words. She said. Monroe skimmed the page. She didn't argue, didn't deflect, because now the narrative had slipped out of her hands. The district had called that morning. There would be a formal review of the handling of Khalil's suspension, an audit of digital harassment policies, and a request for Monroe to submit a statement about her judgment. Suddenly, silence wasn't safe anymore. By the end of the day, Khalil got a message from the superintendent's office. They wanted to meet, to talk about his experience, to better understand how the system responded and how it failed. He didn't say yes, not yet. He needed to think, because now they weren't ignoring him. Now they were watching him, and that kind of attention had its own dangers. He walked home that afternoon with his hoodie up, but his face clear, no flinch, no ducked eyes. He passed the mural near the auditorium again. Still the same: a football, a trumpet, a trophy. But today, it felt different, like something was missing, like a space was waiting, maybe not for him, but for the kids like him, the ones who wore their silence like armor and fought wars no one ever saw coming. When he got home, Jeremiah was at the table, reading, not the newspaper, not a report, Khalil's forum proposal, printed, highlighted. You know, Jeremiah said without looking up, this is stronger than half the briefs I've seen from junior analysts. Khalil dropped his bag, sat across from him. They want me to talk about what happened with the district. Jeremiah looked up. You going to? Khalil paused, then said, I'm not sure they're ready for what I have to say. Jeremiah smirked. Doesn't matter. Say it anyway. Khalil leaned back in the chair, let the silence sit with them a moment, then whispered, I'm not done yet. Some men don't raise their voices. They raise standards. And when they walk into a room, people sit up straighter because power doesn't always knock. Sometimes it just arrives. Jeremiah Rivers was that kind of man. And on this cold October morning, he didn't come to argue. He came to end the performance. The invitation had come 2 days earlier. Not from Principal Monroe, not even from the district, from Mrs. Carter, quiet but sharp, the kind of teacher who knew when policy needed backup. It read Community Stakeholder Forum, Discussion on Student Conduct and Safety Policy. But Khalil knew exactly what it was. They weren't just holding a meeting. They were trying to close the book. I'm not going, he told his dad at the kitchen table. Jeremiah didn't argue, just kept stirring his coffee, then said, without looking up, that's your choice. Khalil exhaled. But if I go, Jeremiah continued, I'm going with you. And so he did. When they walked into the library conference room, the room dipped in volume. Teachers sat on one side, parents on the other, a few student reps near the back. Maya gave Khalil a nod. Riley raised her fist slightly in quiet solidarity. But it was Jeremiah that everyone noticed, not because he said anything, but because he didn't have to. He wore a charcoal pea coat, boots polished, face unreadable. The kind of presence that made even confident adults search for better posture. Principal Monroe greeted them with her usual polished smile. Mr. Rivers, thank you for. Jeremiah held up a manila folder and said, calmly, we'll begin with this. Inside the folder was everything. Khalil's full digital defense screenshots, project logs, untouched transcripts, but also something new, printouts from IP trackers, device logs, metadata showing that at least 3 anonymous complaints came from the same Wi-Fi source connected to Malik's homeroom wing. Not a smoking gun, but enough to raise every eyebrow in the room. Jeremiah placed the evidence on the center of the table like it was Exhibit A in a federal case, then finally sat. No raised voice, no dramatics, just gravity. I'm here, he said, because this school mistook silence for surrender. A few teachers shifted in their seats. One student, my son has endured 3 weeks of humiliation, sabotage, and institutional dismissal. He turned to Monroe. And you called it procedural. Monroe cleared her throat, eyes darting toward the district liaison at the far end of the room. We're still reviewing some aspects. Jeremiah didn't blink. I reviewed them. The difference is, I didn't wait for a committee to tell me when it was convenient. He leaned in. You don't get to erase a child because he made you uncomfortable. Mrs. Carter was the first to speak after him. She looked down at Khalil's timeline, then around the room. I've worked in education for 19 years. She said, And I've never seen a student construct a clearer, more complete digital trail than this. A father from the parent side raised his hand. But let's not forget some of those messages looked aggressive. You all saw the screenshots, reshaped narrative. Control perception. What does that mean for our kids? Maya responded before Khalil could. It was a media literacy activity. Out of context, you wouldn't judge a novel by one sentence. Someone else whispered, still, optics matter. Jeremiah turned to face them all. Optics only matter to people who don't want to see clearly. Silence. After the meeting, Jeremiah and Khalil walked the hallway slowly. You didn't have to speak like that, Khalil said. They were already listening. Jeremiah shook his head. No. They were waiting for the story to end. He stopped. You had to remind them it wasn't over. They reached the school entrance. Jeremiah put a hand on Khalil's shoulder. Your voice won't always be welcome, but it has to be heard. Khalil looked up, finally meeting his father's eyes. I don't want to be a symbol. You're not, Jeremiah said. You're a mirror. They just don't like what they see. That night, Khalil sat on his bed, violin beside him, journal open. He didn't play. He wrote a new section for the student ethics guide. When the system looks away, tools for students facing institutional silence. He wrote for an hour straight, not because anyone asked, but because someone would need it one day. And somewhere in the district office, a copy of Khalil's timeline made its way to the director of student relations, stamped, documented, logged, because what began as a quiet folder across a table was now a case file, and it was only just beginning. The next morning, Khalil walked through the front doors of Hawthorne Ridge like he had every other day. Same hoodie, same violin case, same quiet stride. But people didn't see him the same anymore. Some gave him a nod, some gave space. Some just watched, not with fear, not with mockery, with something new, recognition, because the full story was finally starting to surface. And you can't unsee the truth once it's been shown. Third period, social studies. Ms. Langston stood at the front of the room with a whiteboard marker in one hand and a folder in the other. We're starting a new project today, she said. Profiles in modern leadership. She wrote the words in bold across the board. Your task is to choose someone who stood for something, not because it was popular, but because it was necessary. A few hands shot up. Names were thrown out. Malala, Greta Thunberg, Colin Kaepernick, Obama, Ms. Langston smiled. All great choices, but feel free to think local too. Leadership doesn't always come with headlines. She looked toward Khalil, only for a moment, then turned back to the board. When it was time to write down his pick, Khalil sat with the pen frozen over the paper. Then he wrote, I want to write about students who don't get famous, the ones who fight quietly, who stay after class, who get silenced and keep showing up anyway. He slid the paper forward. Langston read it, didn't say a word. Just underlined it once with her pen. At lunch, Khalil found his usual seat near the vending machine already taken. Not by Malik, by Jameer, a quiet 7th grader from music class. Hoodie 2 sizes too big. Glasses always fogged up. Barely spoke a word since school started. He looked up when Khalil approached. I can move, he said quickly. Khalil shook his head. Nah, you're good. Jameer blinked. You sure? Khalil sat beside him, opened his lunchbox. You play cello. Right? Jameer's face lit up just a little, trying to. Still bad with my bowing. Khalil pulled out a napkin and a pen, sketched a quick diagram. Try shifting pressure near the frog. Don't fight the string. Let it carry you. Jameer stared at the napkin like it was gold. Nobody around them said anything. Nobody laughed. Nobody interrupted. They were just two black boys in hoodies talking music over peanut butter sandwiches, and that was a kind of revolution no one saw coming. In the music room after school, Mr. DeSoto stood with his arms crossed as Khalil ran through scales. "You're more fluid now," he said. "Less technical, more intentional." Khalil lowered the violin. "I think I just stopped playing for survival." DeSoto smiled. "Good, because now you're playing for something bigger." He walked over, handed Khalil a folder. District Arts Committees hosting a youth showcase, not just music spoken word, poetry, digital media. "You've been invited to submit something." Khalil raised an eyebrow. "I didn't apply." "You didn't have to," DeSoto replied. "Your story applied for you." That evening, Khalil sat across the table from his mom while she sorted through insurance paperwork from her nursing job. "You okay?" she asked without looking up. He nodded. "You sure I'm not mad anymore?" She paused, looked him in the eye. "You don't have to forgive them just to move on." "Baby," Khalil smiled softly. "I'm not forgiving them. I'm outgrowing them." She leaned over, kissed the top of his head. "That's my boy." Upstairs, Jeremiah stood in the hallway outside Khalil's room. He didn't knock, didn't need to. Khalil looked up from his desk. "Did you know this would happen?" he asked. Jeremiah stepped in slowly. "No, but I knew the world wouldn't wait for you to be ready." Khalil nodded once. "They're listening now." "Good," Jeremiah said. "Then give them something worth remembering." And he did. Later that night, Khalil recorded a video, just him, sitting in front of his phone, violin on his shoulder, no edits, no effects, no filters, just his voice. He spoke first. "My name is Khalil Rivers. I used to think being quiet was a way to survive, but I've learned silence can be a stage, too, if you own it." Then he played a new piece, part classical, part freestyle, something raw, personal, untitled. When he finished, he looked into the camera. "Play your story before someone else writes it for you." Then he clicked upload, and the screen went black. By the time Khalil walked into school on Friday morning, the video had already made its way around. Not viral, not explosive, but felt, shared quietly, passed in group chats, sent with no caption because some things don't need one. It was just him, sitting in a hoodie, talking, playing, and in doing that, he reclaimed everything they tried to strip away. In homeroom, Maya turned her phone toward him under the desk. "Look, on screen, his video. Hundreds of comments. This hit different. Why does this sound like healing?" He really said more in 4 minutes than half these teachers do in a semester. Khalil didn't smile. He just nodded, because it wasn't about hype. It was about balance. He wasn't trying to be heard anymore. He was making sure he wasn't erased. Later, during advisory, Mr. Lennox stepped into the room, clipboard in hand. "Rivers," he said, "Principal Monroe wants to see you." "Now!" A few students raised their eyebrows, but nobody said anything. Khalil stood, packed his bag, and left the room without a word. In the front office, Monroe's door was already open. She looked up when he entered, her posture stiff, lips pursed. "Sit down." Khalil did. A long silence stretched between them. She slid a form across the desk. He didn't touch it yet. "We've reviewed the footage, the audio, your compiled documentation, also your recent statement," she said, referring to the video. Khalil didn't respond, just waited. Monroe sighed. "The district is reinstating you fully. Your suspension from the ethics forum is lifted, and the youth leadership program wants to use your case as part of a new media integrity curriculum." Another beat, she added. "We will be making a formal announcement Monday." Khalil looked at the form again. It wasn't just a reinstatement, it was an acknowledgement. Finally, he picked up the pen and signed, then asked, "What happens to the people who sent the fake reports?" Monroe paused. "There's an internal investigation. I can't speak to the outcome." Khalil stood up, zipped his hoodie, Then I guess the outcome will speak for itself. And he walked out. At lunch, Maya and Riley were already waiting. Well, Maya asked. Khalil slid the reinstatement form onto the table. Riley whooped under her breath. Maya pumped her fist. About time. Khalil shrugged. It's a start. Maya nodded. You changed the room. Khalil. He shook his head. No, I made them sit in it. That afternoon, Khalil stepped into the library where the first planning session for the Youth Equity Summit was already underway. Half a dozen students sat in a circle, some familiar, some not. The energy was different now. No whispering, no doubt, just focus. Mrs. Carter greeted him with a warm smile. Your chair's waiting. Khalil sat, pulled out his guide draft, laid it on the table. The top read, Ethics isn't a subject, it's a stand. And then he began. I'm not here to lead everything, he said, but I've learned how fast things fall apart when no one's paying attention. So let's pay attention, starting with each other. Heads nodded. Highlighters clicked. A new kind of work began. At the end of the day, Khalil stopped by the music room. Mr. DeSoto was tuning a cello. Got a minute? Khalil asked. Always. Khalil walked to the whiteboard, grabbed a marker, and wrote a quote in the corner. Silence isn't absence. It's preparation. DeSoto read it, then looked at Khalil. You ready for the showcase next month? Khalil shrugged. Always. That night at home, Jeremiah was on the porch. Khalil stepped out beside him, 2 mugs of hot tea in hand. He handed one to his father. They sat in silence, watching the wind shake the last of the red leaves from the maple tree near the sidewalk. After a while, Khalil spoke. You think I did the right thing? Jeremiah sipped his tea, then said, I think you stopped asking for permission. A pause, and that's how every movement begins. Before going to bed, Khalil opened his notebook one last time. He wrote a single sentence. They tried to make me quiet, so I taught them how to listen. Then he closed it and slept like a man who no longer carried someone else's story on his shoulders. The truth doesn't explode. It seeps. Quiet at first like a leaky faucet. Annoying. Unnoticed. Then one morning you wake up and your floor is underwater, and that's exactly what happened to Malik. It started small. A screenshot here, a whisper there, an old snap thread dug up from somebody's archive. But Khalil never touched a thing. He didn't need to, because the truth has fingerprints, and Malik's were all over it. It began on a Monday. Someone posted a screen recording in the main student group chat. It was short, 7 seconds, but brutal. In it, Malik's voice could be heard laughing in a DM. Watch how fast this fake violin clip spreads. Kid gone melt. Below the video, the poster wrote, remember when we all thought this was random? The comments came fast. Wait, he made the fake bro really edited the audio. This ain't a joke anymore. Malik didn't respond. Not at first. Not even when Ethan, his right-hand guy, stopped sitting next to him in lunch. By third period, more receipts surfaced. Group chats, memes Malik had created, voice notes, even a screen-recorded conversation where he coached someone on what to post about Khalil's temper to make it seem believable. The crown was slipping, and Malik knew it. That afternoon, he tried to sit at his usual table in the cafeteria. Nobody moved. They didn't tell him to leave, didn't confront him. They just went quiet. That silence, it wasn't passive. It was powerful. It was the same kind Khalil had lived in for weeks, now turned inside out. Malik poked at his fries, pretending not to care, but his shoulders were hunched. His eyes didn't look up. The room had shifted, and he wasn't built to stand in it. Across the cafeteria, Khalil sat at a table near the window. Not alone. Miles and Riley were with him. Even Jameer, the cello kid, had joined them. They weren't celebrating, weren't gloating, just sitting, present, still. And in that stillness was the loudest statement in the building. You don't have to scream to win. After school, Miles caught up with Khalil near the bike rack. "You got a minute?" he asked. Khalil nodded. Miles dug into his pocket, pulled out a flash drive, and held it up. "I think you should have this." Khalil hesitated. "What's on it, proof?" "Everything. Who started it? When?" "The real edit files, messages between Malik and two other kids. My name's on some of them." "Two. I didn't stop him. I just followed." Khalil looked at the flash drive, then at Miles. "You don't have to give this to me." Miles shook his head. "I know, but I have to give it to someone, because this whole thing, it wasn't right. And I let it happen." Khalil took the drive, nodded once, and that was it. No lecture, no threat, no performative forgiveness, just truth handed off quietly, like passing a torch that had burned too many fingers already. That night, Khalil gave the flash drive to Miss Carter. She said one thing, "Thank you," then plugged it into her laptop. 2 hours later, she emailed the district, "Subject line urgent digital harassment evidence immediate review requested." By Tuesday morning, Malik didn't show up to first period. Whispers move fast. He's in the office. Darby's meeting with his parents. "Yo, they pulled his phone and everything. He might be suspended." In the group chat, someone posted a meme, a photo of Malik with the words, "Master of Puppets" caught in the wires stamped across his forehead. Nobody laughed. They just watched the fall. Khalil didn't post anything, didn't comment, didn't feed the flame, because that's not what this was about. It was never about revenge. It was about restoration. He'd reclaimed his name. Now the system had to deal with what it allowed. After school, Miss Carter found Khalil at his locker. "They're reviewing it now." She said, "The district's sending in a forensics team. Everything you provided checks out. Every timestamp, every file name." She paused. "They asked how you learned to document so precisely." Khalil smiled. "My dad reads metadata like it's bedtime stories." She laughed, then added, "Whatever happens next, you've already won." Khalil shook his head. "I didn't want to win." Ms. Carter nodded. "I know. That's what makes you different." That evening, Khalil walked past his old seat on the stage in the auditorium. It was empty, spotlight off, but in his mind, he could still hear the note he held the longest. Not the loudest, just the most honest. And he knew somewhere down the line, someone else would step onto that same stage, wearing a hoodie, holding their breath, holding their story, and maybe, just maybe, someone would listen a little sooner next time. By Wednesday morning, Malik Carson's name was no longer being whispered. It was being written, typed, logged. The district had launched an official inquiry. It had recovered backups of deleted messages, the edited video files, all traced to a school Chromebook assigned under Malik's ID. There was no denying it now. The joke was over, and so was the illusion of control. At 10:17 a.m., the school sent out an internal bulletin. "A formal investigation is underway regarding recent student misconduct tied to digital harassment. Appropriate actions are being taken in accordance with district policy. Thank you for your cooperation and continued commitment to student safety." It didn't name him, but everyone knew. At lunch, Malik's usual table sat empty, not just missing him, vacant, his crew scattered, silent, suddenly very invested in their phones and keeping out of it. The same boys who once laughed the loudest were now invisible. The hallway didn't orbit around them anymore. That center of power, it had shifted. Meanwhile, Khalil sat outside near the courtyard benches, warm sun breaking through cold wind. Jamir sat beside him, munching chips. Maya flipped through her notes for the Youth Equity Summit. Riley scrolled through the event calendar on her phone. No one mentioned Malik, not because they didn't care, but because Khalil didn't bring it up. He wasn't celebrating the fall. He was building something from the ground it left behind. In fifth period English, Missy Alvarez introduced a new writing prompt. "Describe a time you watched the truth come to light." What did it cost? What did it change? The room fell quiet. Khalil stared at his paper, then wrote the first line. It didn't explode. It leaked slow, steady, undeniable, and then he kept going. No edits, no pauses, just honesty. It poured out like it had been waiting. After school, he stayed behind to help Ms. Carter prep materials for the upcoming summit. As they organized stacks of highlighters and printed guides, she said, "The superintendent called today." Khalil looked up. "He wants to meet with you, not just about your case, but about shaping digital conduct guidelines going forward. They want student voices involved." Khalil nodded. "Good, because students are the ones living in it." Carter smiled. "That's exactly what I told them." Back home, Jeremiah was waiting by the kitchen window. News traveled fast. He'd already read the bulletin. "I heard," he said as Khalil walked in. Khalil tossed his bag down. "It's over." Jeremiah shook his head. "No, it's just clearer now." He slid a sheet of paper across the table. It was a scanned copy of the ethics guide Khalil had drafted, cleaned up, formatted. "The district's rolling this out next semester. They're calling it the Rivers Protocol." Khalil blinked. "What they're using your model as a framework across the whole district." Khalil sat down, slow, stunned. "It was just notes." Jeremiah grinned. "Turns out notes hit harder when they're in the right key." That night, Khalil posted again. No music, just words. In white text on a black screen, "Truth doesn't seek revenge. It seeks return, not to punish, but to realign. This isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of a better one." He didn't check the likes, didn't read the comments. He closed the app, placed the phone face down, and picked up his violin, played a scale, then another, and then he just let it flow. Nothing rehearsed, just memory in motion. Because sometimes healing sounds like a solo, and sometimes it sounds like silence no longer being necessary. The next day at school, Principal Monroe stopped him in the hallway, not cold, not distant, measured. "Khalil," she said. He turned. Calm. "Yes, I wanted to let you know. The forum invitation was updated. You've been officially reinstated as keynote speaker." He nodded. "I'm aware." She hesitated. "There's a lot we're still reviewing. I can't undo what's been done, but I hope we can move forward." Khalil looked at her, eyes level. "You don't have to say sorry." She blinked. "I don't know," he said. "You have to listen better next time." Then walked away. Back in the music room, Mr. DeSoto waited with a letter, a real one. Paper, envelope, from the State Arts Council. "You got a nomination." He said, "For what?" DeSoto grinned. "Youth Cultural Impact Award." Khalil opened it, read in silence, then asked, "What do I even say if I win?" DeSoto shrugged. "Maybe start with how you turn silence into signal." By Friday, Hawthorne Ridge felt different. Not louder, not calmer, just clearer. The fog had lifted. The murmurs that used to fill the hallways were replaced by long looks and short nods. The air didn't carry tension anymore. It carried memory. The kind of memory people didn't talk about, but felt. And in the middle of it all, moving like he always did, unhurried, hoodie up, violin case slung across his back, was Khalil Rivers. But now the silence around him wasn't avoidance. It was respect. In the counselor's office, Malik sat with his arms crossed and his jaw clenched, his mother beside him, fuming, the assistant principal reviewing the findings, a district rep typing quietly in the corner. "Your son will serve an out-of-school suspension," the AP said flatly, "and will be removed from all extracurricular leadership positions for the remainder of the semester." Malik stared straight ahead. "This isn't just about one video. This is about a coordinated attempt to discredit and humiliate another student using digital tools and social influence. The district rep added, "We're also referring this to the state's Student Conduct Board for record review. Your actions had reached beyond the school." Malik finally spoke. He made it easy, always walking around like he's better than everyone. The room went quiet. The rep didn't flinch. You didn't humiliate him because he acted superior. You humiliated him because he refused to play by your rules. And just like that, the truth sat in the room, unapologetic, heavy, real. Back in English class, Miss Alvarez handed Khalil a stack of essays to review, not his own, peer evaluations. Your job, she said, is to give feedback that helps the story grow. Khalil flipped through the first one. It was Jamir's, titled How I Learned to Breathe Without Hiding. Khalil read the first paragraph and paused, because in Jamir's voice, he heard something familiar: tight lungs, shaky confidence, hope stitched between every line. He smiled, wrote one sentence of feedback at the bottom. Your silence was never the problem. It was your strength they didn't know how to read. After school, the courtyard buzzed with the slow buildup of the weekend. Flyers for the Youth Equity Summit were taped to every window. Khalil's name printed bold beneath the word keynote. Some students nodded as he passed. Others gave small fist bumps. No one joked anymore, not because they were afraid, but because they had seen something honest and couldn't unsee it. Inside the auditorium, Maya and Riley were setting up for the tech check. Maya glanced at Khalil walking down the aisle. You ready for tomorrow? He shrugged. As I'll ever be. Riley handed him a mic. Try it. Khalil tapped it, spoke softly. This is for everyone who thought they had to disappear to be safe. The sound echoed across the empty seats. Riley gave a slow nod. Yeah, she said. That's the one? That night, Khalil sat at his desk with a blank page in front of him. His keynote wasn't finished. He'd been putting it off, waiting for something to shift. And now, it had. He picked up his pen, started writing. They tried to name me a problem. I answered by becoming a lesson. He paused, then added, a system can't change if it doesn't admit what it covered. I am not the disruption. I am the clarity. The words flowed now. No doubt, no fear, no need to ask if it was good enough. Because it was true, downstairs, Jeremiah sat watching the evening news. A segment aired about youth leadership in education. They mentioned Hawthorne Ridge, briefly, vaguely, but the image on screen, it was Khalil, performing, focused, unbothered. Jeremiah didn't smile wide, just nodded once, and whispered to himself he taught them, without raising his voice. The next morning would be the summit, the stage, the microphone, the crowd. But tonight Khalil stood by his window, looking out at a sky that had finally stopped pressing down on him. The wind carried the scent of leaves and change. He opened the window wider, let the air in, and for the first time in weeks, he exhaled without weight, because the fall was never really about Malik. It was about what Khalil chose not to carry anymore. The Youth Equity Summit opened with silence. Not because the room was empty, it was packed. Students from 6 different schools filled the auditorium, shoulder to shoulder. Teachers stood along the back wall, parents in the balcony, superintendent, school board, a few local reporters too. But as the lights dimmed and Khalil Rivers stepped onto the stage, no one said a word. Not because they were told to be quiet, but because they wanted to hear. He stood center stage, no podium, no flash, just him. Hoodie zipped halfway, hands loose at his sides, violin case leaning against the stool behind him. He took a breath, let it sit, then spoke. They tried to name me a threat, he said, but I turned that name into a lesson. The words didn't ring out. They settled, soft, measured, like notes landing gently on a still pond. You don't have to yell to be heard. You don't have to fight to prove you belong. But when they try to erase your voice, you owe it to yourself to become unforgettable. He scanned the crowd. Some kids leaned forward. A few were already writing things down. I didn't want to lead anything. Khalil continued. I wanted to make it through 8th grade without being a headline. A few light chuckles rippled. He let them pass. They thought I was dangerous because I wore a hoodie, because I kept to myself, because I didn't play their game. So they made me one. He stepped slightly left, but I wasn't made in that moment. I was made in the silence. The afternoons practicing in empty rooms, the nights writing everything down when nobody asked. Pause. I didn't go viral because I was loud. I went viral because someone tried to break me and I didn't bend. In the wings. Maya stood frozen, mouth slightly open. She'd seen Khalil speak before. But this was something different, Riley whispered. He's not reading anything. He doesn't need to, Maya said. He's lived it. Khalil continued. I wasn't the only one. There are kids in this room who've been laughed at, overlooked, cornered, questioned, not for what they've done, but for what they look like, how they speak, how quiet they stay. He looked out, and the room felt like it leaned in. I want to say something to them, to the quiet kids, the hoodie kids, the ones who write poems in their heads during gym class, who get called too much or too weird or too angry. His voice didn't rise, but it deepened. You're not too anything. You're right on time. He stepped back, took the violin from its case, tuned a string, then another. The crowd held their breath. Then he played, not the piece from the school showcase, not the one they all knew. Something new, something raw. It started gentle, a slow melody, rising like a question, then layered notes overlapping like memories. Every string spoke of betrayal, of resistance, of truth. He played like someone who wasn't asking to be heard anymore. He was teaching them how to listen. When the final note faded, the auditorium didn't erupt. It sat still, reverent, then a single clap, then two, then all, but not loud, not chaotic, unified, steady, like a heartbeat. Backstage, the superintendent wiped his glasses. I thought we were bringing in a student. He said, Ms. Carter smiled. We did. Later, as people filed out, Jameer found Khalil by the back doors. He didn't say much, just handed him a small folded paper. Khalil opened it, a handwritten poem. They laughed at your silence, so you tuned it into song. Now their noise is background, and your quiet plays strong. Khalil blinked once. Thanks, Jameer just shrugged. Figured you'd get it. The next day, a video clip from the keynote landed online. Nothing edited, just Khalil's words. Straight from the mic. It spread faster than the first one ever had. Not because it was controversial, but because it was necessary. In the comments played us something we didn't know we needed. My son wears a hoodie to school. He stood taller today. He didn't just speak, he taught. And for Khalil, that was the lesson. Not the applause, not the title, not the award nominations or committee invites, but this, that the loudest thing he ever did was stand still while the world finally leaned in. The Monday after the summit felt surreal. No fanfare, no confetti, no parade in the halls, but something had shifted quietly, permanently, not just around Khalil, but in the walls themselves. The school wasn't louder, it was listening. And that might have been the biggest win of all. At his locker, Khalil found a folded note wedged into the vents. He opened it, written in neat print. You said what I've been trying to say for years. I'm not invisible anymore. Thank you. J. S. No name, no face, but it was enough. Because Khalil had learned, not every story needs a spotlight to be seen. Sometimes, a shadow stepping forward is enough to light the way for someone else. In class, Miss Alvarez invited him to the front. You don't have to speak. she said, but a lot of students asked if you'd share something. Anything. Khalil stood, unsure, then reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a single note card. He read, "Leadership isn't when people listen to you. It's when they start listening to themselves because of something you showed them." He sat down. The room stayed quiet, but every pen in the room started moving. After class, he found Jammer waiting by the stairs. "You want to eat outside today?" the younger boy asked. Khalil smiled. "Let's do it." They sat under the tree behind the gym, the one nobody used unless the indoor tables were full. Jammer pulled out a tiny speaker and pressed play. Classical music drifted out Mozart, soft and fast. "I've been practicing the bow shift you showed me," Jammer said, still bad at it. Khalil took a bite of his sandwich. "Then you're on the right path." Jameer tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Khalil chewed, swallowed, then said, "Anything worth doing starts with sounding bad." Jameer grinned. "I must be doing really well then." Elsewhere in the building, Monroe sat at her desk, scrolling through district reports. Her phone buzzed. An email from the superintendent's office. Subject: internal reflections on youth leadership models. Attached were 3 video links: Khalil's keynote, the full student-led summit panel, a breakdown of the New Rivers Protocol being considered for adoption district-wide. She read the summary. Authenticity, when centered over optics, creates safer and more inclusive systems. This is no longer optional. She stared at the words. Then, for the first time in weeks, she leaned back in her chair and listened to Khalil speak, all the way through. No skipping, no muting, no notes, just the words of a student she had underestimated and a voice she could no longer pretend not to hear. Back in the music room, Mr. DeSoto leaned against the piano as Khalil tuned his strings. "You've been quiet today," he said. Khalil smiled faintly. "Feels good to be quiet on my own terms." DeSoto nodded. Still writing, Khalil pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket and handed it over. DeSoto unfolded it, a title at the top. "How to Lead Without Shouting." He read the first line aloud. "Step 1, let the noise pass. Step 2, keep standing." DeSoto chuckled. "Step 3. Khalil thought for a moment. "Play, but you need I want him anymore." That night, the Youth Equity Summit video aired on local news. Not the full keynote, just a clip. But it was enough. Khalil's voice on screen, saying, "They tried to name me a threat. I answered by becoming a lesson." Jeremiah stood in the living room, arms folded. Khalil walked in mid-broadcast. His dad didn't say a word, just pointed at the screen and gave him a slow, proud nod. His mom walked in next, still in scrubs. She took one look, teared up, then kissed the side of his head. "You're not a story," she said. "You're a movement." Later that evening, Khalil got a DM from someone he didn't know. A girl, different school. "They did the same thing to me. Not violin debate. I wore a scarf. And they edited my clip to make me sound like I messed up. Your speech gave me back my fire. I'm speaking next week. This time, no filter. Thank you." Khalil stared at the message, then typed back, "Don't let them rewrite you. Play your truth." He hit send, then closed his phone. In his room, he pulled out his violin. No performance planned, no stage, just the strings and the stillness. He played low and slow like his story was breathing through the wood, not to impress, not to prove, just to feel it again. That moment where silence didn't mean defeat. It meant control. By the end of that week, the story of Khalil Rivers wasn't just a school story anymore. It had become something more, a reference, a ripple, a roadmap. Not because he'd gone viral, but because quiet people, overlooked people, hoodie-wearing, hallway-avoiding people finally saw someone like them choose not to disappear, and that was a story worth retelling. The halls of Hawthorne Ridge weren't louder now. They were more aware. Teachers didn't scan over Khalil like he was invisible anymore. They paused when he raised his hand. They asked him real questions and expected real answers. Some of them even said thank you, not for the performance, but for the perspective. And among the students, something changed too. Fewer jokes, fewer whispers, more acknowledgement. Even Jameer, the cello kid, was starting to hold his shoulders a little straighter when he walked to music class. Sometimes change doesn't come in thunder. Sometimes it arrives like a violin string warming up in the cold. Khalil kept showing up to class, to the form, to the music room after school. He wasn't looking to lead. He was just present. But that presence, it was louder than any voice in the building. On Thursday, Miss Carter called him into her office. She closed the door and handed him a plain manila envelope. He opened it. Inside, an official letter from the State Board of Education, nomination Youth Cultural Impact Award. Khalil read it twice, then looked up. This real, Mrs. Carter smiled. Very. He didn't say anything at first. Then quietly, I never asked for any of this. I know, she replied. But sometimes, the best leaders are the ones who never raise their hand, just their standard. That night, Khalil walked the long way home, past the mural near the auditorium, past the corner store where he'd once waited for his mom's shift to end, past the bench where he used to sit alone at lunch when the cafeteria felt too loud. He walked slowly, not because he was tired, but because he finally felt the weight of everything he'd carried and realized he was still standing. At home, his mom had made spaghetti and left a sticky note on the counter. Microwave 1 min. Eat everything. Love. Mom. He smiled. Ate. Then sat down in the living room where Jeremiah was reading the news on his tablet. Khalil handed him the nomination letter. Jeremiah read it once, didn't react right away, then looked up and said, How you feel? Khalil leaned back into the couch, like the lesson wasn't just mine. Jeremiah nodded. Exactly. Friday morning, a flyer appeared on the school announcement board. Open forum, How We Heal. Student-led conversation, hosted by the Youth Ethics Committee. Special guest Khalil Rivers. Khalil didn't put it there. Neither did Maya. Not Riley. It was the school. That meant more than the award. Because being invited in after they tried to lock you out, that was proof the lesson landed. At lunch, he found another note, this time on his tray, folded, anonymous. Inside, it read, You taught me I could survive this school, that I didn't have to shrink to stay safe. 8th grade girl. Hall. C. He read it once, then twice, then slid it into the back cover of his notebook, next to Jameer's poem, next to the flyer, next to the first outline of his keynote, because reminders matter, even for the strong. That night, Khalil posted a photo, not of him, not of the violin, just the empty hallway outside the music room, light spilling in from the door. The caption read, They tried to erase me. Now my silence signs their lessons. And in the comments, preach. Man said that without even standing on a soapbox. The hoodie speaks. After posting, Khalil picked up his violin and played until his fingers ached. He didn't record it, didn't share it. Some music isn't for the world. Some music is for the soul that survived. And as the last note rang through his room, he whispered something only the strings could hear. Lesson delivered. Monday morning opened with mist curling over the football field and wet leaves sticking to the sidewalk like old secrets. Hawthorne Ridge Middle School looked the same on the outside, but inside, the weight had shifted. There was no morning announcement about it, no special banner, no trophy, but people felt it in the way the halls moved, in the way eyes met and didn't flinch. They felt Khalil Rivers in the space, even before he stepped through the front doors. When he did, it was like any other morning. Same hoodie, same soft footsteps, same violin case swinging lightly from his shoulder, But everything was different now. Not because of the summit, not because of the speech, but because he had proven something deeper, that you could stand still in a storm and walk out whole. He passed Miss Carter in the hallway. She nodded. Heard from the district again? She said, they still putting my name on everything. Khalil asked. They are? They want to license the Rivers protocol to other schools now. Khalil raised an eyebrow. Can I at least get a hoodie with that on the back, Mrs.? Carter laughed. Don't tempt me. In first period, Miss Alvarez started the class with a journal prompt. Describe a moment when you realized you mattered. Pen scratched paper, brows furrowed. Khalil didn't move for a minute. Then he wrote, I thought it would be the day they apologized. Turns out, it was the day I stopped needing one. He slid the page forward. Alvarez read it, pressed it flat with her hand, then looked up and gave a single nod. Between classes, Maya found him at his locker. Guess what she said? I give up. You've been nominated for another award. Khalil rolled his eyes. Tell them to save the paper. I'm still turning in math homework late. No, this one's different. She said, it's from a nonprofit. They watched your summit clip, called you a transformational voice for student dignity. Khalil blinked. That sounds like something they put on a statue. Maya smiled. Well, don't hold your breath, but maybe one day. At lunch, he sat under the same tree where he once sat alone. Now, Jamir was there, sketching violin fingering exercises on a notepad. Riley showed up mid-sandwich. Maya came last, plopping down with a folder full of color-coded tabs. They didn't talk about the past. They didn't need to. They were building something new. Across campus, a new poster had gone up near the auditorium. They tried to silence the hoodie, but he played. Anyway, quote from Summit Feedback. Form E118, below it was a photo of Khalil on stage. Mid-bow stroke, eyes closed, no tags, no logos, just a quiet piece of truth, taped to the wall like scripture. After school, Khalil stopped by the music room. Mr. DeSoto was wiping down music stands. Thought you'd be off on a victory tour by now. He said, nah. Khalil replied, still got one more note to play. DeSoto handed him a clean sheet of staff paper. Then write it. The world's listening. Khalil took it, folded it. I'll play it when they forget again. DeSoto gave a solemn nod. They always do, but that's why we stay loud. That evening, Khalil walked the long way home, through the empty courtyard, past the mural by the gym. He paused there, looked up at the faded paint football helmets, science beakers, cheerleader pom-poms. Still no violin, still no hoodie. He pulled out a pen, on the edge of the wall, barely noticeable. He wrote in small, firm letters, still here, then walked on. The street was quiet, the air thick with the smell of wet pavement and new fall. Khalil's hoodie was damp at the shoulders, but he didn't pull it tighter. He let it hang loose, open, like he wasn't hiding anymore, because the hoodie had done its job. It had shielded him when no one else would. Now, it was just part of him, not armor, not camouflage, just history on his back. And as he crossed the final block before home, violin case swinging, heart light, and head high, Khalil Rivers didn't think about the speeches, or the shame, or the silence. He thought about the sound that came after, the one that said, I'm still walking, and you can't turn me down. It's easy to listen when someone is standing under a spotlight, but the true test, it's in what you do after the lights go off, after the clapping stops, after the world moves on. And Khalil Rivers' hoodie on, voice calm, violin case in hand, was learning how to keep walking long after the noise faded. Tuesday came with its usual routine. Rain misted across the blacktop. Students shuffled in half awake. Lockers slammed. Feet squeaked. Nothing flashy, nothing headline-worthy, But something had changed. Not in the school, in Khalil. He noticed things differently now. The girl sitting alone 2 rows from the back in language arts. The boy who raised his hand only to put it down before the teacher looked his way. The kids who kept earbuds in. Not for the music, but to block out a world that rarely made space for them. Khalil had been all of them. And now, without trying, he became a quiet kind of mirror. The kind that reminded you you were still visible. In gym class, Coach Darby announced that student reps were being selected for the city's Inter-School Leadership Council. Khalil didn't raise his hand, didn't have to. Coach just looked at him. Rivers, you and Khalil blinked. I guess, Coach chuckled. That's the most confident I guess I've ever heard. The class laughed with him, not at him, and Khalil smiled barely, but genuinely. That was new. After school, the ethics committee met in the library. The mood was lighter now. No tension, no doubt. Jameer brought a printed copy of the updated Rivers Code and passed it around. Maya had drafted new session topics, microaggressions in hallways, digital respect, 901, what we wish teachers knew. Khalil listened more than he spoke, but when he did speak, everyone leaned in. He wasn't trying to be in charge. He was just anchoring the space. That was enough. On Wednesday, Miss Sue Carter pulled him aside after class. There's a panel next month. She said, district-wide, they want you to sit on it. Khalil sighed. I'm not trying to be the face of this forever. She nodded. I get it, but maybe you're not the face. Maybe you're the foundation. He paused. That hit deeper than she probably knew. I'll think about it. You've earned the right to choose, and that was the key. Wasn't it choice? After everything finally, Khalil had a say in his own story. That weekend, Khalil and Jeremiah drove to a local community center. Jeremiah had bought an old cello online, a little worn, but with a rich tone. I'm donating this to the after-school program, he said. Khalil raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Jeremiah smirked. I'd rather give it to a kid who needs it than let it sit in the garage. Khalil helped carry the instrument inside, watched as a girl, no older than 10, ran her hand along the wood like it was magic. And in her wide-eyed wonder, he saw a piece of himself. That night, back home, Khalil sat on the porch, hoodie up, hood down. It didn't matter anymore. He wasn't wearing it to hide. He was wearing it because it was his. Jeremiah joined him. Coffee in hand. You ever think about everything that's happened? Khalil asked. All the time. You regret anything? Jeremiah exhaled slowly. I regret how long it took them to see you, but not 1 second of how you handled it. Khalil looked out at the quiet street. I didn't do it alone. His dad nodded. No one ever does. Later that evening, Khalil opened a new journal, the old one full of quotes, outlines, and memories sat tucked safely on his bookshelf. He wrote a single sentence on the first page. Every story worth telling starts with a silence someone decided not to keep. He underlined it twice, then closed the book. Not because the story was over, but because the next chapter needed fresh pages. The next morning, a sixth grader stopped him in the hall. Small frame, nervous eyes. You're Khalil. Right. Yeah, I'm thinking about trying out for the winter recital. Cello. Khalil smiled. You should. The kid hesitated. I mess up a lot. Khalil shrugged. Me too. Just don't stop playing. The kid grinned. And right there, in the hallway, Khalil saw it again. Legacy, not in trophies, not in plaques, but in echoes. The last day of the quarter came with no parade, no speeches, no awards, just bell tones and backpacks. Hallway echoes and scribbled locker graffiti. Khalil liked it that way, because not every story needs a standing ovation. Some just need to keep walking. As the final bell rang, students poured out in waves. Some ran, some shouted, some disappeared into waiting cars with doors that slammed like exclamation points. Khalil didn't rush. He moved slowly through the hall, hands in pockets, violin case over his shoulder. He stopped by his old locker, opened it. The inside door still had Yamir's poem taped to it, faded from weeks of wear. They laughed at your silence, so you tuned it into song. Now their noise is background, and your quiet plays strong. He peeled it off gently, folded it, tucked it into the back pocket of his notebook, not because he needed the words, but because he respected the journey that wrote them. Outside, the sun broke through gray clouds for the first time in days. Khalil stood at the bottom of the school steps, taking it in. The breeze pulled at his hoodie sleeves, tugged at the corners of old memories, and for a moment, he closed his eyes. He saw everything: the showcase, the shame, the snap story, the silence, the comeback, the truth. Then he opened his eyes and kept moving. Maya caught up to him 2 blocks down. "You heading home?" "Yeah." She fell in step beside him. "You realize you've become a legend." "Right, I didn't ask for that." "I know," she said. "That's why it happened." They walked in silence for a bit, sneakers brushing against cracked sidewalk. "You think they'll remember all this next year?" she asked. Khalil shrugged. "Maybe not, but I will." She nodded slowly. "That's enough." At the next corner, they split. Khalil continued alone, passing the corner store where the cashier once offered him a bag for free the week the video dropped, past the playground where Jamir once confessed he almost quit cello, past the mural still faded, still missing kids like him. And this time, he didn't stare at what wasn't there. He imagined what could be added: a boy with a bow, a shadow in a hoodie, a silence turned into sound. When he got home, he found his mom in the kitchen, humming to herself while chopping onions. She looked up. "Last day." "Huh, yeah." She wiped her hands on a towel, kissed his forehead. "I'm proud of you." "Baby." Khalil set his bag down. "Not just for surviving," she added, "but for making something out of it." He didn't know how to answer that, so he didn't. He just hugged her a little tighter than usual. That evening, Khalil opened his notebook to the last blank page. He had one more thing to write, not for school, not for a speech, just for himself. They called it a hoodie. I called it home. They called it silence. I called it strategy. They called it strange. I called it survival. And when they finally listened, I didn't scream. I played. He closed the book, not because it was over, but because some stories deserved a rest. He stepped out onto the porch just as the streetlights flickered on, night air cool against his skin. The weight of the violin on his back felt different now, lighter, earned. He walked down the steps, hoodie up, not to hide, just to carry what brought him here. Each step was calm, confident, a quiet kind of power most people never understand, the kind that comes from walking through fire and never letting the smoke write your story. As he turned the corner, a kid on a scooter zoomed past him and yelled, "Hey, you're the violin kid." "Right." Khalil paused, smiled. "Yeah." The kid grinned wide. "My sister watches your summit video every week, says it helps her sleep." Khalil chuckled. "Tell her thanks." The kid nodded, sped off, and Khalil kept walking, because his story wasn't about being seen. It was about showing others how to stand. And somewhere in a school, in a hallway, in a quiet room where a student thinks no one sees them, there's a violin, a hoodie, a truth waiting to be played. And when that kid decides to pick it up, they won't be alone. Because Khalil Rivers walked first. They saw a hoodie and made assumptions. They heard silence and thought it meant weakness. But Khalil Rivers showed them what real power looks like. Not in the noise, but in the refusal to disappear. This wasn't just a story about one black boy and his violin. It was about every student who's ever been underestimated, every quiet voice that holds a storm, every hoodie that carries history, not threat. Khalil didn't fight back with fists. He fought back with focus, with truth, with presence. He turned a moment of humiliation into a movement of clarity. He reminded us that dignity doesn't need permission, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk forward, calm, silent, unstoppable, so the next time you see someone different, quiet, unbothered, caring more than they let on. Remember Khalil. Remember the boy who didn't raise his voice. He raised the standard. What did this story mean to you? Tell us in the comments. Your words matter more than you know. And before you go, let us know where you're watching from. We read every reply. Subscribe for more real, raw, and powerful Black stories. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next lesson in silence. And if you felt something today, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. This is Silent Power Stories, where we don't just tell stories, we pass on survival.